I discovered the theft on a freezing Tuesday morning in January when my well pump started running constantly, and my water pressure dropped to almost nothing. My name is Brandon Quincy, and I had lived in my house in Stillwater, Minnesota for 8 years. The property sat on 3 acres at the edge of a newer development called Riverside Estates, and I had my own private well that had served me perfectly since I moved in. The HOA controlled the newer section of the development, but my house predated all of that nonsense by about 15 years. I was grandfathered in, which meant I paid no HOA fees and followed no HOA rules. That distinction had been made crystal clear in my property deed. The president of the Riverside Estates, HOA, was a woman named Patricia Whitmore, and she embodied every stereotype of an overzealous homeowner association tyrant you could imagine. She was 52, drove a white Lexus SUV, and had that particular haircut that screamed, "I want to speak to your manager," from 3 blocks away. Her 2 main accomplices were Linda Hastings and Carol Brennan, both cut from the same cloth of boredom and excessive free time. That Tuesday morning, I was standing in my bathroom, watching the faucet sputter and cough when it should have been flowing strong. I threw on my winter coat and trudged outside to check the well house, a small shed about 50 feet from my main house. The pump was running hot, working overtime, and that's when I noticed something that made my blood boil. Fresh, trenching scars ran from the edge of my property line, clearly dug within the last few weeks. The ground had been carefully filled in, but whoever did it had been sloppy enough that the disturbed earth stood out like a sore thumb against the frozen Minnesota soil. I followed the trench line with my eyes, and it led directly toward the HOA's new community building. I grabbed my shovel and started digging where the line crossed into my property. It took me 20 minutes in the frozen ground, but I found it. A 2-inch PVC pipe, professionally installed, tapped directly into my well line. Someone had literally stolen my water supply. I stood there in the cold, my breath making clouds in the morning air, and felt a rage building that I had not experienced in years. This was not just theft. This was trespassing, property damage, and water theft all rolled into one. I pulled out my phone and took about 30 photos from every angle, making sure to document where the pipe crossed my property line and how it connected to my well system. Then, I followed the pipe toward the HOA building. The new community center had been completed just before Christmas, a massive structure that Patricia had pushed through, despite opposition from homeowners who thought it was an unnecessary expense. I had watched the construction from my property line, grateful that I did not have to pay for any of it. As I got closer, I noticed something else. The entire circular driveway in front of the building was steaming slightly in the cold air. They had installed a heated driveway system, one of those fancy radiant heating setups that kept ice and snow from accumulating. Those systems used a tremendous amount of water mixed with glycol, running through underground pipes to generate heat. They were running their heated driveway off my well. I stood there for a solid 5 minutes, just staring at that steaming driveway, calculating in my head how much water that system must be using. My well was good, producing about 20 gallons per minute, but it was not designed to supply an entire heated driveway system plus my household. No wonder my pressure had dropped. I walked directly to the community center's front door and tried it. Locked. It was only 8 in the morning on a Tuesday. I peered through the windows and saw a spacious interior with new furniture, a kitchen area, and what looked like a small gym. This place must have cost the HOA members hundreds of thousands of dollars in special assessments. My phone buzzed. It was my neighbor Jim Carver, one of the few people in the development I actually liked. "Hey Brandon, you see Patricia's been asking around about you." What about? Something about water usage and community resources. I didn't really understand it. She was at my door yesterday with some papers. Thanks for the heads up, Jim. I hung up and looked back at that steaming driveway. So Patricia was already preparing some kind of defense or justification. That meant she knew exactly what she had done. I went back to my property and examined the connection point more carefully. This was professional work, done by a licensed plumber. There was a valve on my side of the property line, clearly installed as part of their tap. How considerate of them to include a shut-off valve for the water they were stealing. I took more pictures, then went inside and started making calls. My first call was to my lawyer, a guy named Robert Chen who had handled my house closing years ago. Robert, I need advice on property rights and water theft. Water theft? That's a new one. What's going on? I explained the situation in detail. Robert listened without interrupting, and I could hear him typing notes. Okay, this is actually pretty serious, he said when I finished. Minnesota water law is complicated, but private well water is your property. Tapping into it without permission is theft, and the trespassing to install the pipe compounds it. Do you have documentation? About 50 photos so far. Good. Don't touch anything yet. I need to look into the specific statutes, but I think we are looking at civil and possibly criminal liability here. How much water are we talking about? A heated driveway system for a circular drive about 60 feet in diameter, plus whatever else they might be using it for. Could be running constantly, pulling 10 to 15 gallons per minute when it is active. Robert whistled. That is substantial. That could drain your well or burn out your pump. Let me make some calls. Don't confront them yet. Too late. I already followed the pipe to their building. Did you speak to anyone? No, the place was locked. Okay, good. Sit tight. I will get back to you by end of day. I spent the rest of the morning documenting everything. I pulled up the county GIS system online and printed out the property boundary maps. The pipe clearly crossed from their property onto mine, with the tap point about 15 feet inside my boundary. I measured it twice to be sure. Around noon, I saw Patricia's white Lexus pull up my driveway. I watched from the window as she got out, smoothed her designer coat, and marched to my front door like she owned the place. The doorbell rang with an aggressive insistence. I opened the door and leaned against the frame. Patricia. Brandon, we need to talk about your well water. My well water. Funny you should mention that. Her eyes narrowed. The HOA has been conducting a survey of water resources in the community, and we have concerns about private wells affecting the water table for everyone. Is that right? Yes. We are going to need you to agree to some restrictions on your usage. I laughed. I could not help it. You are standing on my porch, asking me to restrict my use of my own well water, while you have got a pipe tapped into my system running your heated driveway. Her face went through several interesting color changes. I don't know what you are talking about. Really? So if I go dig up that pipe again, the one that crosses my property line about 100 yards that way, it won't lead to your fancy new community center. Any water infrastructure in this area is community property. Not on my land it isn't. I am not part of your HOA, Patricia. You know that. It is in my deed. There are legal easements for utilities. Not for wells. Not without permission, and definitely not without compensation. You want to try again? She drew herself up to her full height, which was about 5'6". The HOA board voted on this project. We have documentation. The HOA board doesn't have authority over my property. You trespassed, you installed infrastructure without permission, and you are stealing my water. I've got pictures, measurements, and a lawyer. Her jaw tightened. You are making a big mistake. The only mistake was yours. You should have asked. We did ask. You refused. That stopped me. When did you ask? 6 months ago, at the community meeting. The community meeting for HOA members, which I am not. You received a notice. I receive a lot of junk mail from your HOA that doesn't apply to me. But let me be clear. Even if you sent a notice which I never saw, a notice is not a request. And even if you had asked directly, which you did not, I would have said no. And even if I had said yes, which I didn't, you still can't just tap into someone's well without a written agreement. This is about community cooperation. This is about theft. Patricia's face had gone from red to pale. We can work something out. Yes, we can. You can pay for the damage to my property, compensate me for the water you have already used, and we can discuss rates for future use. Or you can disconnect and find your own water source. The system cost $300,000. We can't just change it. Not my problem. You should have planned better. She tried several more angles, alternating between threats and attempts at sweet talking. I shut them all down. Finally, she left, her Lexus spitting gravel as she accelerated too fast down my driveway. I called Robert back. Patricia just showed up with some story about community water surveys and easements. Did you record the conversation? No, should I have? Start recording everything. Minnesota is a one-party consent state, so you can legally record conversations you are part of. If she comes back, record it. She said they voted on the project at an HOA meeting and sent me a notice. Robert made a thinking sound. That is meaningless. They can't vote themselves access to non-member property. Even if they sent notice, which doesn't constitute a request, they needed your explicit written permission to access your well. Water rights in Minnesota are tied to the property owner. They have no leg to stand on legally. So what do I do? For now, document everything. I will send them a cease and desist letter. Let's see if they are willing to negotiate before we escalate. What if I just shut off the valve? Robert paused. That is your legal right. It is your water, but it might be better to give them formal notice first. Covers you better if this goes to court. How long will your letter take? I can have it drafted and sent today, overnight delivery. They will have it tomorrow. Do it. That afternoon, I noticed increased traffic on the street. Patricia's car went by 3 times. Other HOA board members drove past slowly, looking at my property. Word was spreading. Jim called me around 4. Dude, what did you say to Patricia? She is going door to door telling everyone you are threatening the community water supply. She tapped into my well without permission. I told her to disconnect. Oh man, she is saying you are being unreasonable about sharing resources. Did she mention the part where she is stealing from me? Not in so many words. She is spinning it as a misunderstanding about community infrastructure. It is only a misunderstanding if she somehow didn't understand that my well, on my property, isn't hers to use. For what it is worth, I believe you. Half the neighborhood is getting tired of her power trips anyway. That evening, I sat on my porch despite the cold and watched the community center from a distance. Every 30 minutes or so, someone would drive up, park, and go inside. By 7 p.m., there were a dozen cars there. An emergency HOA meeting, I guessed. My phone rang at 8:30. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. The message was from Linda Hastings, Patricia's right hand on the board. Mr. Quincy, this is Linda Hastings from the Riverside Estates HOA board. We have reviewed your concerns and would like to invite you to tomorrow's board meeting to discuss a resolution. Please call me back at this number. I deleted the message. Robert called at 9. Just wanted to confirm the letter went out. They will have it tomorrow by 10 a.m. It formally demands they cease using your water immediately, compensate you for past usage, and begin negotiations for repair of your property. What kind of compensation are we talking about? I suggested $15,000 as a starting point, based on estimated usage, the cost of your increased pump wear and general damages. That is negotiable, but it sets a baseline. And if they refuse, then we file suit. Civil court for damages and an injunction. We could also report it to the sheriff as theft, but that gets complicated. Let's try the civil route first. I agreed and hung up. Then I went outside one more time to look at that valve. My valve on my property, controlling my water. Robert wanted to wait for the letter to be delivered. That made sense legally, but I was not feeling particularly patient. Wednesday morning arrived cold and clear. I was up at 6, drinking coffee and waiting. The overnight delivery truck arrived at my house at 9:45 with a copy of Robert's letter for my records. I read through it, impressed by the formal legal language that basically said, "Stop stealing or else." At 10:15, Patricia's Lexus came screaming up to the community center. She must have just received her copy. I watched through binoculars as she stormed inside. 3 other board members arrived within minutes. My phone started ringing at 10:30. Patricia. I ignored it. She called 4 more times in the next hour. At noon, a pickup truck arrived at the community center. 2 guys got out with toolboxes. They walked around the building, examining the ground, clearly looking for the water line. I took pictures of them on my property without permission. One of them saw me watching and waved me over. I walked to the property line but did not cross onto HOA land. "You the homeowner?" he asked. He was about 40, wearing a contractor's jacket with Midland plumbing on it. I am Dave. We installed the system here in November. HOA just called us with some questions about the water supply. Questions like where it comes from. He looked uncomfortable. Something like that. "Can I ask you something off the record?" "Sure." "Did you give permission for a tap on your well?" "Absolutely not." He rubbed his face. "That is what I was afraid of. Lady who hired us, Patricia something, she told us the well was community property under some kind of shared agreement." "Did you see the agreement?" "She said it was in the HOA documents. We checked with the county for any shared well registrations and didn't find anything, but she insisted it was legal. Showed us paperwork." "What kind of paperwork?" "HOA meeting minutes voting to approve the project." "Looked official." "HOA meeting minutes don't give them access to non-member property." Dave nodded slowly. "Yeah, I am starting to see that. Look, we are licensed and insured. If this turns into a legal thing, we need to know. We did the work in good faith based on what the client told us." "I understand. You might want to document your conversations with Patricia very carefully. Already ahead of you. Soon as she called this morning, I started taking notes." He handed me a business card. "If you need a statement from us about who told us what, I will cooperate. We don't want our license caught up in someone's property dispute." "I appreciate that." The plumbers left without doing any work. 20 minutes later, Patricia called again. This time I answered. "You talked to my contractors." "They talked to me. On my property." "You are trying to sabotage this project." "I am trying to stop you from stealing my water. We are willing to negotiate. Then respond to my lawyer's letter formally. We want to meet with you directly, tomorrow 6 p.m. at the community center." "No." "What do you mean, no?" "I mean all communication goes through my lawyer now. You trespassed on my property, damaged it, and stole from me. You do not get friendly meetings. You are being completely unreasonable. And you are being a thief. Respond to the letter, Patricia." I hung up. Thursday morning, I decided I had waited long enough. Robert's letter had given them 24 hours to cease usage. That deadline had passed at 10 a.m. I put on my winter gear, grabbed my tools, and walked out to the valve. It was a simple quarter-turn ball valve, painted green to blend in with the ground cover. Professional installation, easy to operate. I pulled out my phone, started a video recording, and narrated what I was doing. This is Thursday, January 16th at 11:30 a.m. I am on my property, at the valve that controls the water line that was installed without my permission, connecting to my private well. I am now shutting off this valve to stop the theft of my water. I reached down and turned the valve 90 degrees. It moved smoothly. In the distance, I could hear the change in my well pump's operation. The constant strain eased. The pressure normalized. I walked back to my house and watched. For about an hour, nothing happened. Then a car pulled up to the community center. Someone went inside, came back out a few minutes later and drove away quickly. 10 minutes after that, Patricia's Lexus appeared, followed by 2 other cars. I made popcorn through my binoculars. I could see them inside the building, clearly agitated. Someone kept pointing at the floor, probably where they had controls for the radiant heating. Patricia was on her phone, pacing. At 1 p.m., a different plumbing truck arrived. Not the guys from Midland Plumbing. These guys went right to work, digging along the pipe route. It took them about 30 minutes to locate the valve. One of them tried to turn it. I had locked it with a small padlock after shutting it. That plumber walked over to the community center. Animated conversation ensued. He walked back to the valve, examined it, made a phone call, and then left without doing any work. Patricia marched across the lawn toward my property. I met her at the boundary line with my phone recording. "You locked the valve. It is my valve. You can't do that." "I can do whatever I want on my property with my water. We need that water. The system doesn't work without it. Should have thought of that before you stole it. We will pay you. Name your price. Respond to my lawyer's letter formally. Make an offer in writing." "There isn't time for that. It is supposed to snow tonight. The driveway will freeze." "Again, not my problem. You are doing this out of spite. I am doing this because you committed multiple crimes against me and my property. Until we have a formal agreement, negotiated through lawyers, with compensation for damages and a clear contract for future use if I agree to it, that valve stays closed." She tried to push past me onto my property. I stepped in her way. "Do not come onto my land without permission." "Or what?" "Or I call the sheriff for trespassing. We will see how that conversation goes when I show them your illegal water tap." She was shaking with rage. "This is not over. You are right about that. This is far from over." She stormed back to the community center. Through the binoculars, I watched more board members arrive. It looked like an emergency session. At 3 p.m., my phone rang. "Robert, just got a call from a lawyer named Stuart Hopkins. He represents the HOA. They want to negotiate." "What are they offering?" He didn't give specifics. "Said they need to set up a meeting between all parties after they respond to your letter formally." That is what I told him. He said they want to resolve this quickly due to weather concerns. Let them panic. They should have considered weather when they were planning their theft. Robert chuckled. "I will admit, I rarely get clients as willing to play hardball as you are. They made this adversarial, not me. True enough. I will set up a meeting for next week if they agree to terms. In the meantime, they are apparently trying to jury-rig some kind of temporary heating solution." I spent the rest of the afternoon watching their scramble. A heating and cooling company showed up with equipment. They ran extension cords everywhere, setting up what looked like industrial heaters pointed at the driveway. It was the most inefficient, expensive solution imaginable. Jim called me around dinner time. "Dude, you are a legend in the neighborhood right now." "Why?" "Patricia is going door to door trying to drum up support against you. Half the people are signing her petition, but the other half are laughing at her. She is trying to say you are endangering property values and violating community standards." "I am not in the community." That is what people keep pointing out. You should see the Facebook group, Total Civil War. There is a Facebook group, Riverside Estates residents. Normally, it is all lost cat posts and complaints about people leaving their trash cans out. Right now, it is World War III. People are picking sides. What are they saying? Some people think you are being petty and should just share the water. Others are pointing out that Patricia basically stole from you and you are well within your rights. A few people are bringing up all the other dictator stuff she has pulled over the years. One guy posted about getting fined $500 because his mailbox post was the wrong shade of white. That happened, apparently. There is a whole thread of Patricia horror stories coming out. This seems to be the thing that broke the dam. I checked my email before bed. Robert had forwarded me a formal response from Stuart Hopkins, the HOA's lawyer. It was 3 pages of justifications and excuses, claiming good faith misunderstanding, citing invalid easements, and generally trying to minimize what they had done. The actual offer was buried in the second page. $1,000 for any inconvenience and a monthly payment of $50 for continued water use. I called Robert. Did you see their offer? Insulting, right? $1,000 does not even cover the diagnostic work to make sure they did not damage my well system. And $50 a month. That heated driveway probably uses $500 worth of water a month at commercial rates. I know. I will draft a counter-offer. What are your actual goals here? I thought about it. Full compensation for trespassing, property damage, and water theft to date. Professional inspection of my well system at their expense to ensure no damage. If they want to continue using the water, I want a formal contract with a realistic rate and an expiration date. And I want the right to terminate with notice if my well production drops. What kind of rate are we talking about? Check with a few plumbers about what it would cost them to drill their own well or connect to municipal water. Then we can price accordingly. I like the way you think. I will have something drafted by Monday. Friday morning brought the predicted snow. Not a blizzard, but a steady, heavy snowfall that started accumulating quickly. I watched the community center driveway turn white as their makeshift heaters fought a losing battle against nature. More cars arrived throughout the morning. Apparently the community center had some kind of weekend events scheduled. I watched people navigate the snowy, icy driveway, walking carefully, some slipping. The heated driveway had been a point of pride. Now it was just another parking lot. Around noon, a sheriff's deputy pulled into my driveway. My heart rate kicked up, but I reminded myself I had done nothing wrong. I met him at the door. Mr. Quincy. That's me. Deputy Martinez. I have had a complaint filed about a water access dispute. Mind if I ask you some questions? Come in. Can I record our conversation for my records? Sure, I am recording too. He tapped his body camera. We sat at my kitchen table. Martinez was about 35, professional and calm. So tell me your side of this. I walked him through everything, showing him the photos, the property maps, and the documentation. He took notes and examined the evidence carefully. Can we walk out to look at the physical setup? Absolutely. We bundled up and I showed him the valve, the pipe routing, and the property boundaries. He took his own photos and measurements. This valve is on your property? Yes, sir. About 15 feet inside my boundary line. And the tap into your well is also on your side? Yes. The pipe runs from their building, crosses onto my property right about there, and connects to my well house over there. Did you give permission for this installation? No, sir. Never asked, never agreed, never signed anything. When did you discover it? Tuesday morning when my water pressure dropped to almost nothing. He nodded slowly. And the HOA president, Patricia Whitmore, she is claiming you agreed to this. She is lying. She mentioned some community meeting 6 months ago that I supposedly attended, but I am not an HOA member. I was not at any meeting. You are not an HOA member? No, sir. My property predates the HOA. It is in my deed that I am grandfathered out. He made more notes. Okay, here is where we are. This looks like a civil property dispute, possibly with criminal elements. The trespassing and unauthorized connection could be criminal theft of water, but the HOA is claiming good faith misunderstanding. Good faith does not involve trespassing and stealing. I agree, but prosecution would be up to the county attorney, and they generally want property disputes settled in civil court first. My advice: you have got a solid case. Keep documenting everything. Work with your lawyer, and if they trespass again or try to damage your property, call us immediately. What about the complaint they filed? Honestly, it is meritless. You are allowed to control access to your own well water. I will note that in my report. After he left, I felt validated. Law enforcement had looked at the situation and sided with me. That felt good. The snow continued through the afternoon. By evening, the community center driveway had 6 inches of accumulation. Their heaters had given up. I saw someone out there with a snowblower, clearing paths manually. Saturday morning, I woke to find eggs thrown at my front windows and water thief spray painted on my mailbox. I documented it thoroughly and called the non-emergency sheriff's line to file a report. A different deputy came out, took photos, and added it to the ongoing case file. Sounds like your neighbors are unhappy, he observed. Some of them. Not my problem if they believed lies about the situation. Any idea who did this? I have suspicions but no proof. My security cameras were not angled right to catch them. That was partly true. I had just installed security cameras the day before and had not optimized the coverage yet. The deputy gave me a card with a case number. If it escalates, call immediately. Property damage like this sometimes precedes worse behavior. I spent Saturday cleaning egg off my windows and repainting my mailbox. Jim came over to help. This is getting ugly, he said. Patricia's doing, I guarantee it. Probably, but she has got people worked up. The Facebook group is out of control. Someone posted your address. That's not exactly a secret. True, but still, be careful. Sunday was quiet. I saw cars going to and from the community center, but nobody bothered me directly. I used the time to review the documentation and prepare for the upcoming negotiation. Monday morning, Robert called. Got our counter offer ready. $20,000 for damages and past usage, professional well inspection at their expense, and if they want continued access, $500 per month on a year-to-year contract with either party able to terminate with 90 days notice. Will they go for it? Probably not the first offer. But it is reasonable based on actual costs. I am sending it over now. How long until we hear back? Could be days, could be weeks. Hopkins is a negotiator. He will want to make us sweat. But Hopkins called back that afternoon. Robert conferenced me in on the call. Your counter-offer is excessive, Hopkins said. His voice was smooth, practiced. My counter-offer reflects actual damages and market rates, Robert replied. The HOA can't afford $20,000 plus ongoing monthly payments. The HOA can't afford to have built a $300,000 system dependent on stolen water either, but here we are. There was no theft. This was a good faith misunderstanding. Your client trespassed on my client's property, installed infrastructure without permission, and used his water without compensation. Call it whatever you want, but it is still illegal. Hopkins sighed. Let's talk realistic numbers. The HOA can offer $5,000 total settlement and $100 per month. Not even close. Robert said. "Your client committed multiple violations of property law. We could pursue criminal charges if we wanted. 20,000 is more than fair. 10,200 monthly. 18,400 monthly, plus the well inspection." They went back and forth for 20 minutes. I stayed silent, letting Robert work. Finally, they landed on $15,000, $350 per month, a professional well inspection, and a 2-year contract with renewal options. "I need to discuss this with my client," Robert said. "We will get back to you by end of day." After Hopkins disconnected, Robert asked, "What do you think?" "The money is lower than I wanted, but acceptable. I like that it is only a 2-year contract. We could push for more." "No, let's take it. I want this resolved, and I want to make sure their system works safely. If they can't keep up with payments, I want the right to shut them off again. I will add penalty clauses for late payment and ensure you retain the right to audit their usage. Give me a few hours." By 5 p.m., we had a deal in principle. Hopkins would draw up the formal contract, and we would sign by the end of the week. The HOA would also issue a formal apology and ensure my property was repaired to original condition. I turned the valve back on Tuesday morning. Within an hour, the community center driveway was steaming again, melting off the accumulated snow and ice. I had to admit, the system was impressive. Expensive and excessive, but impressive. Thursday afternoon, I met Robert at his office to review the final contract. It was 12 pages of dense legal language, but it covered everything we had discussed: payment schedule, usage limits, inspection requirements, termination clauses, and a formal acknowledgement of wrongdoing. "You did well," Robert said. "This is a solid contract. When do I get the money?" "They are cutting the check at the signing tomorrow. We are meeting at a neutral location, conference room at the county building." Friday's meeting was tense but professional. Patricia attended with Hopkins and 2 other board members, Linda and Carol. I came with Robert. We sat across from each other at a long table while Hopkins walked through each section of the contract. Patricia looked like she had aged 5 years in 2 weeks. Her signature confidence was gone, replaced by tight-lipped frustration. When Hopkins finished his review, she signed first, her pen strokes angry and sharp. I signed next, then Robert and Hopkins witnessed. Hopkins handed me an envelope with a cashier's check for $15,000. "The apology letter will be sent to all HOA members this weekend," Hopkins said. "And Mrs. Whitmore has something she would like to say." Patricia looked like she was chewing glass. "I apologize for the misunderstanding regarding your well water and any inconvenience this may have caused. It was the most insincere apology I had ever heard, but I did not care. I had it in writing, I had my money, and I had a contract that protected me going forward." "Apology noted," I said. "I hope we can move forward professionally." We shook hands, though Patricia's grip was limp and brief. As we left the building, Robert clapped me on the shoulder. "Congratulations. You handled that perfectly. Thanks for your help. Send me a copy when you get the well inspection done. I want to make sure everything looks good." I hired a well inspection company the following week. They spent 4 hours examining my entire system, from the pump to the pressure tank to all the distribution lines. Their report showed no significant damage, though they recommended replacing some worn seals on the pump housing as a precaution. I sent the bill for the inspection and repairs to Hopkins, who paid it without complaint. The monthly payments started arriving on time. $350 like clockwork, deposited electronically on the 1st of each month. I set up a separate savings account just for that income. Life gradually returned to normal. The neighborhood drama faded as new gossip took over. Jim told me the Facebook group had moved on to arguments about snow removal and someone's barking dog, but the story was not quite over. About 6 weeks after we signed the contract, I noticed unusual activity at the community center. Construction vehicles, boring equipment, and survey markers. I watched with binoculars as they drilled in the far corner of the HOA property. They were installing their own well. I called Robert. "Are they allowed to do that while under contract with me? Let me check the terms." I heard papers rustling. "The contract doesn't prohibit them from developing alternative water sources. It just obligates them to pay you for the contract term regardless." "So they are going to pay me for 2 years and then cut me off." Looks that way. Smart move on their part, actually. They will still come out behind financially, but they won't be dependent on you long term. I watched their well installation with mixed feelings. On one hand, I was getting paid whether they used my water or not. On the other hand, I had kind of enjoyed having leverage over Patricia. The new well was completed in March. They ran the lines underground and connected their system. My well usage dropped back to normal household levels. But those monthly payments kept coming. In June, something interesting happened. I got a call from Jim. "Dude, you need to see this. Check the county court records." "Why? Just do it. Search for Patricia Whitmore." I pulled up the county court website and searched. There were 3 new cases filed against Patricia personally and 2 against the HOA board. Homeowners were suing over the special assessments for the community center, claiming the project was approved without proper voting procedures. Another suit claimed Patricia had used HOA funds inappropriately for personal expenses. "Where did this come from?" I asked Jim. "Your situation made people start questioning everything." Someone requested financial records under state law. Turns out Patricia had been playing fast and loose with the budget for years. Your water thing was just the tip of the iceberg. Over the next few months, more details emerged. An independent audit revealed Patricia had spent over $40,000 in HOA funds on personal expenses, disguised as community project costs. She had also pushed through multiple vendor contracts without proper board approval, including the heated driveway system, because her cousin owned the heating and cooling company that supplied the equipment. The county attorney got involved in August. Patricia was charged with theft by embezzlement and fraud. The HOA board was dissolved and placed under temporary oversight by a court-appointed administrator. I watched it all unfold from the comfort of my property, with my reliable well water and my monthly payment of $350 that kept arriving like clockwork, even as the HOA imploded. In September, Patricia's case went to trial. I was not directly involved, but several neighbors who were testified about her abuses of power. The jury found her guilty on 4 counts of embezzlement. She was sentenced to 18 months in prison and ordered to repay over $60,000 to the HOA. Linda and Carol, her board accomplices, faced civil suits but no criminal charges. They had been negligent in their oversight but had not directly benefited from Patricia's schemes. The court-appointed administrator for the HOA turned out to be a retired accountant named Margaret Torres. She was everything Patricia was not: transparent, communicative, and fair. She held open meetings, published detailed financial reports, and actually listened to homeowner concerns. In October, Margaret called me personally. "Mr. Quincy, I wanted to reach out about the water contract." "Is there a problem?" "No, actually, the HOA has been paying reliably, and I have reviewed the circumstances that led to the contract. I just wanted to say, on behalf of the organization, that we appreciate your willingness to work with us despite how badly the previous board handled things." "I appreciate you saying that." The contract expires next year. I wanted to give you early notice that we have our own well now and won't need to renew, but we will honor every payment until the contract term ends. I understand. That is fair. I also wanted to ask if you would be interested in serving on the new advisory committee we are forming. We are trying to rebuild trust with the community, and having someone with your perspective could be valuable. I am not an HOA member. I know. But you are affected by HOA decisions when they impact the broader community. We want input from everyone in the area, not just members. I thought about it. I will consider it. Send me the details. She did, and after reviewing the committee structure and responsibilities, I agreed to participate. It met quarterly, focused on major projects and policy decisions, and had no enforcement authority, just advisory input that I could work with. The first meeting was in November. About 20 people attended, including several of my neighbors I rarely spoke to. Margaret facilitated with practiced ease, and we discussed upcoming projects, budget priorities, and lessons learned from the Patricia debacle. During the open comment period, one homeowner stood up and pointed at me. I want to apologize to Brandon. I was one of the people who believed Patricia's lies about you. I signed her petition and said some things on Facebook I regret. I am sorry. Several other people nodded and murmured agreement. I was caught off guard. I appreciate that, I said. No hard feelings. Patricia was convincing when she wanted to be. The meeting continued with productive discussions about snow removal, common area maintenance, and plans for a genuinely community-focused event calendar. It was night and day different from the stories I had heard about Patricia's meetings. As we filed out afterward, Jim caught up with me. So you are like part of the HOA now, advisory role only. No fees, no binding rules on my property. Still character development for you. Shut up. We both laughed. December brought heavy snows, and I watched the community center's heated driveway perform flawlessly. Their own well provided all the water they needed. My well served just my house, pressure strong, pump running smoothly. The final payment on the contract arrived in January of the following year, 2 years to the day after I had discovered the theft. $350, plus a note from Margaret. Thank you for your patience and partnership. The community is better for your involvement. I calculated the total compensation. $15,000 initial payment, plus 24 months of $350, plus the well inspection and repairs at their expense. About $24,000 total. Not bad for 2 years of occasional annoyance. More importantly, the neighborhood had transformed. Patricia's removal had broken the culture of fear and petty tyranny. The new board, elected after Margaret's interim period ended, was responsive and reasonable. Violations were handled with warnings and cooperation instead of immediate fines. Projects were debated openly instead of rammed through. My security footage, fully installed and optimized now, never caught anyone vandalizing my property again. The water thief graffiti was the last incident. In February, Jim and I were having beers on my porch, watching the snow fall. You know what the crazy thing is, Jim said. That whole situation probably saved this neighborhood. If Patricia had kept going, there would have been lawsuits. Maybe the whole HOA would have collapsed. You forcing the issue on the water thing made people pay attention. I was just protecting my property. Yeah, but it mattered. Sometimes standing your ground does that. I sipped my beer and considered that. Maybe he was right. Or maybe Patricia would have imploded eventually regardless. Either way, I was glad I had fought back. The well inspection company had told me my well was good for another 20 years with proper maintenance. The heated driveway at the community center would last about 15 years before needing major repairs. I would not have to deal with any of it. I looked out over my 3 acres, my property, my well, my boundaries clearly marked and respected. The HOA existed in its proper place, governing its members with reasonable rules and fair enforcement. I participated when I wanted to, contributed ideas when I had them, and retained complete control of my own land. Patricia served 16 months of her 18-month sentence with time off for good behavior. I heard through the neighborhood grapevine that she moved to Wisconsin after her release, starting over somewhere else. I hoped she had learned something, but I did not really care. She was no longer my problem. The heated driveway steamed gently in the winter air, melting snow as it fell, working exactly as designed. Just using someone else's water now, I raised my beer to Jim, to property rights. He clinked his bottle against mine, to standing your ground. We drank and watched the snow fall, and I felt the deep satisfaction of knowing I had protected what was mine, forced accountability where it was needed, and come out ahead in every way that mattered. The valve sat on my property, unlocked now since there was nothing flowing through that pipe anymore. I thought about removing the whole system, digging up the pipe and restoring my land completely. But I left it there as a reminder. A monument to the importance of asking permission, respecting boundaries, and the consequences that follow when you don't. Spring came eventually, as it always does in Minnesota. The community center planned a reopening celebration under Margaret's new board, with activities and food and actual community building instead of the exclusive cliques Patricia had fostered. They invited everyone in the surrounding area, HOA members or not. I attended with Jim and his family. The heated driveway was off, unnecessary in the mild spring weather. Kids played on the lawn. People talked and laughed without the tension that had marked neighborhood gatherings in the past. Margaret found me near the food tables. "Glad you could make it. Thanks for the invitation." I meant what I said before. Your involvement in the advisory committee has been valuable. You bring a perspective people respect, just trying to be a good neighbor. You are. And I think most people realize now that you were right about how you handled the water situation. You gave us a fair deal when you could have made things much harder. I shrugged. I wanted to be compensated fairly, not destroy anyone. Once we had an agreement, I kept my word. That is exactly the kind of attitude we are trying to build here. Fairness, accountability, respect. She moved on to greet other guests, and I found myself standing there feeling something unexpected. Actual community belonging. Not forced, not obligated, but genuine. Jim appeared with a plate of barbecue. "You look contemplative." Just thinking about how things change. From water thief to respected community member, quite a journey. Shut up, I was never a water thief. You know what I mean. I did. From adversary to participant, from boundary disputes to cooperation. All because I had stood my ground when it mattered. The sun was warm on my face. My well was producing perfectly. My property was secure. The HOA was functional and fair. And I had a stack of bank statements showing $24,000 in compensation for 2 years of minor inconvenience. Some battles are worth fighting. Some lines need to be drawn. Some theft needs to be stopped with a simple quarter turn of a valve and the willingness to watch the consequences unfold. I had done all of that and come out the other side better for it. The neighborhood was better for it too. And somewhere in Wisconsin, Patricia Whitmore was probably still insisting she had done nothing wrong, that it had all been a misunderstanding, that if people had just cooperated with her vision, everything would have been fine. But she was wrong, and the evidence was all around me. A functioning community, respectful boundaries, fair agreements, and the simple principle that you can't just take what isn't yours without consequences. I grabbed a plate of food and joined Jim's family on the lawn. The community center stood behind us, its heated driveway dormant, its water supply independent and properly sourced. Everything as it should be. The valve remained on my property, a silent guardian of lessons learned. And my well kept pumping, 20 gallons per minute, serving exactly who it was meant to serve. Me and anyone I chose to share with on my terms with fair compensation and mutual respect. That is how it should work. That is how it finally did work, and that made all the difference.